We interviewed Canella Coulter Brown for a program that we were doing, and we were looking forward to her being on the panel, but she's not well. So send your prayers up for her, and she has some amazing stories about Kansas City. She was one of the first 3 black people to graduate from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, before it was the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So we have her story here. And all of our oral histories are available if you want to listen to them. William Chaney. Mr. Chaney is famous for being one of the greatest pit builders in this town. And when I saw his picture, I'm going like, how come we have this picture of this man with all these barbecue things? And they said, because that's what he does. I'm like, okay. So he's famous, he's infamous, and he has some great stories to share with us. Thank you. And Miss Hughes, we welcome you here, and we're so glad to have you as part of this panel, and we can't wait to hear the stories that you reveal. Hazel Mason Nicholson went up the street to Lincoln College Preparatory Academy. She also studied at UMKC. And she obtained her elementary education degree and later became a teacher. And she has Kansas City stories. And Miss Lavina Phillips. Thank you, Miss Phillips, for joining this panel. So I will be the moderator, but I'm going to start with Alvin Brooks. Alvin, we know we have your book. It's for sale in the gift shop. I am just so self-promoting. It's a shame. But I have to sell stuff in this place. But it's a great book. But tell me, when you think about your life in Kansas City, what is that predominant image? What do you think of first?
Well, I think first of, are you able to hear me here? Yeah. First of all, I think about where we are. When I prayed, I talked about this as hallowed ground for people. For people who were, based on the system, the institutions were discriminated against, but we survived in spite of that. And so every time I come down here, and every time I go to the area where I grew up called Leeds Dunbar, I'm reminded of that. And I take my youngsters through that to show them that I show them the old schools that, like Addicts up the street here and Winter Phillips up the street here. The Dunbar that's out now in Leeds is a new Dunbar. It wasn't the one that we came up where they had the outhouses. And those of you who don't know what an outhouse is, that's when your main house burns down and you still have some place to stay. Plus it's where the pages from the telephone book and the Sears and the Wars catalog disappears. But that's what I think about. That's what I think about.
Great things are happening in Kansas City, and we need to be a part of it. And we need to be able to say, Kansas City is a great place to live in, but it's good to travel every now and then. This pandemic has caused a lot of us to have different opinions and different things. But we were talking about it a while ago. When we had to go to school, didn't you get inoculated? Didn't you have to have a shot? Did you worry the pediatrician about if it was the right thing to take or not? Everybody needs to take this shot because it's not about you and about me. It's about us. And we need to do this thing right. If you're not inoculated, if you can get it, take it. Please take it. It's going to help us all to survive and do a better thing in this life. Thank you.
Amen. I've forgotten what the question was. What was the question?
You know, when I was a kid, my mother was holy roly. Annie Chaney, she's sure going to heaven. She talked to you today, right now, and just get home and call you and ask you for forgiveness. My mother was really so. My dad was just the opposite. I never seen him have an argument, you know. And my dad never had any money. Whenever he got a little money to buy him a beer, and my mother would be peeping around the corner, and wherever he set it down, she go pour it out, you know. So, and I never could understand why he never said anything. But after I got older, I realized how much he loved her, you know. And things were different. Going to school, the girls wasn't on the boys' playground. You better not be caught, and the boys better not be caught around on the girls' playground. And my mother didn't want us to go to the show. We had to go. We stayed in church on Sunday. My dad said, Annie, now the boys going to the show. So finally, we got 12, 13 years old. We started going to the gym show. Go to church, get out, and then go to the gym show. Then get out and then go back to church. We stayed in church on Sunday. So anyway, my mother said, you're going to see the works of the devil. That's all they do at the gym show. They show all that devil stuff. Lo and behold, I graduated out of school, and I bought my mother her first TV. It was 1949. And guess what she was glued to? The same pictures that we was looking at the show.
Now, I do remember going to the Lincoln show, because that's where the good folks went. The capsule was okay, and that gym theater stank. It smelled, but the Cowboys and Indians played there, and that's where all the boys went most of the time. And then they had a balcony upstairs in Lincoln, where the girls and boys went, sat up there and smutch. But you better not been doing it, and you better walk home by yourself. And we never went anywhere alone. I'm out of the family of 7, it's only 2 of us left, my brother and me. But we always had to go somewhere together. I guess it was for protection, and I'm glad we did, you know. But the history here is great. And I do remember sneaking in some of the places. I wasn't quite old enough, but I put on them little heels and lipstick and stuff and just follow after the big crowd till I got caught one day. My daddy got me.
Because you should, let me make 2 comments. Number 1, there were 10 high schools in Kansas City, 2 black. R.T. Cole's Junior and Vocational High and Lincoln High School. We had more teachers with PhDs and master's degrees in those 2 black high schools than they did in all the other 8 white high schools. That was the Castle on the Hill, 2111 Woodland, which still stands now, which is Lincoln Preparatory Academy, which I'm sorry to say, more than likely the young people don't know where they are and who went through those hallowed grounds. Who was the pharmacist that filled, he filled prescription and didn't have a license? Who was the one who owned the pharmacy store on Brooklyn?
On 18th?
No, 19th and 25th in Brooklyn, didn't have a license.
Neil?
Neil. He was. He stayed there. He never did. He never went to school. He never went to school, but he filled prescriptions. He never went to school. Miss McKinley, J. McKinley Neal. J. McKinley never went, but everybody went there, and none of them died. But that we knew of. What, I think I need to tell you this though. Mr. Williams won the contract to transport kids to school. He had won the busing contract. He won the contract. The day of the riot, it started the 9th of April, 1968 at for the City Hall by police during tear gas. And I called Mr. Williams. I was there. I was at the school district at the time in urban education with Dr. A. D. Kalman and Robert R. Wheeler, and 2 great educators. And I said, Mr. Williams, I said, there's something going to pop off down here. I said, we need to can you get me some buses down here to haul some of these kids? They've been informed that they could go over to Holy Name to dance. And the priest over there, Father Gibbons, Timothy Gibbons, said, bring them over. He'd open the church. We had Teen Town there every Friday and Saturday night. The first bus arrived, came south from 11th Street on Locust, began to fill the kids up. As soon as it turned east, but one of the police officers threw tear gas in the bus, right at the side of the bus, and the battery stopped. And then they went over, the kids then that did get over to the 23rd and Benton, their Holy Name, they threw tear gas in the basement and the kids ran out. That's fact, because I went there right after. Now let me go back to Mr. Williams. Yellow cab, in all those cabs, Mr. Williams and underbid. Now, when he went to buy buses, No bus company in this metropolitan area was selling a bus. So he had to go to right outside of Chicago to buy buses and have his cab drivers to drive him back. I don't remember the make of the bus, but no mechanic shop in this area that serviced that kind of bus would work. So he had to let the buses sit there, send some of his drivers back to this company that sold the bus to learn how to work on the buses. When it came to rebid that contract, Yellow Cab and all those got together in a conspiracy and underbid him so that he bellied up, had to go bankrupt. And all those old buses, you might remember over there at 31st, right across the street from Happy Foods, were there, and he had to belly up. That shows you where we were. This was 1960s. 1960s. Now, how many of you in here went to integrated school, what so-called integrated schools? How many of you went to so-called integrated school? Okay, so-called integrated school, okay. Yeah, all of us in here went to all black elementary schools and all black high schools. And my first 2 years, I don't know whether anybody went to junior college. Where was junior college at the time? Third high school of Lincoln, third floor of Lincoln High School. So, yeah, and we had great teachers. Now it's interesting. I went in 1956 after 2 years on the police department. When I finished my probationary period, I wanted to go to Rockhurst. I didn't want to go to KCU. It was a private white school. So I figured that since I was Catholic most of the time, I could get into Rockhurst. But they didn't accept me because they would not accept my credits from Lincoln Junior College. So then I had to go to Lincoln, to KCU, where they did accept me. I went there as a junior. Fast forward. God knows best. On last Thursday night, at the American Jewish Committee, at the Jewish Committee Relations Bureau, American Jewish Committee dinner, several hundred people. The president of Rockhurst University, Father Tom Curran, they had asked him several months ago, what do you want, because he has to leave next year after 60 years, what do you want to leave as your legacy? He said, I want a center built on campus for faith and justice, and I want it named after Alvin Brooks.
Any other questions for the panel? Yes.
You know, you always hear about segregated drinking water fountains and bathrooms and things of that sort, but I always understood that there was a boundary line that black people could not live past in Kansas City. So did you encounter any of that if you were all like living in the same area?
No, yes and no.
Now back to your question. The first black family, the majority of black folks lived between Charlotte on the west, Prospect on the east, 27th Street on the south, Independence Avenue on the north. The majority of the black folks. These little pockets you've heard of mentioned were just little pockets. But all of us had to go to the same elementary school. Now Penn School was out by the St. Louis Hospital. That's where Dr. Jeremiah Cameron, a brilliant man, went. And then, in addition to that, the first black family that moved in the 2700 block of Paseo in 1953 was dynamited in 1953. At 2708 Paseo, it still stands. The people who dynamited didn't know how to use it. And then the second house right to the north of that, I think it was 2730, it was dynamited. And so that was when I talk about the culture of Mecca. That's where the majority of us live. Our elementary schools, our high schools, our churches. You know, it was all the social clubs and all those were in that area. The fraternities, sororities, the Brunnels, and all those that belonged to the church group was in that particular area from 27th Street north to Independence Avenue. And so, yes, there were pockets like Dr. Carter was talking about, and like Bill was talking about where they're born. But that's where the bulk of us lived in that area.
Yeah.
And integration did not help us, business-wise, culture-wise, education-wise. Integration helped our white brothers and sisters much more than it did us. Because we lost all of our businesses, because what happened, and then this I-70 didn't help us at all. It took it swept people out. So it's right through it. It just took and also 71, we had people who were told by the state, don't do anything to your houses.
They took your house.
Don't do anything to your houses, and because we're going to come in and you won't get. And another person from the same state would come in the highway department and say, improve your house, and then you'll get more for it. It was a bigger lie than Chicken Little told. It didn't go either way. And so those people, I remember attending the first meeting at Paseo Baptist Church in 1972, talking about this big design and everything. And folks were ready to move again. And it was about, I don't remember the day we had the ribbon cutting ceremony. But, and you know, there's a bridge, Mamie Hughes Bridge. She was the ombudsman.
She's the one that made the difference.
Well,
you didn't want to move, they put a lock on your door.
But so we got, I could say taken, but I'm going to say tooken. Everywhere you went in that situation, because it was that way. And so in spite of Brown versus Board of Education, the 17th of May 1954, I was a sophomore at Lincoln Junior College, and Dr. G.T. Bryant, another brilliant educator.
Yes.
Dr. G.T. Bryant, I remember we had to subscribe, and we were adults. We had to subscribe to Time and Newsweek, and I think it was Time was opposed to, did an editorial, and on the front page, on the cover, opposed to Brown versus Board of Education. Dr. Bryant, that didn't make us, but I say make us, but not in the true sense of the word. We wrote because we had, I think the subscription for a year was something like 75 cents or 95 cents. We had to write, we wrote to them and asked for a refund. They sent us checks back for like 13 and 14 cents for the subscription, because it was an annual subscription. This came out in May, or so from June to December, that's what they sent us back. And I never should forget, Dr. Bryan said this to our sixth class. He said, class, unless black folks rise up and let their voices be heard by voting, white folks will never change. This will stay the same 50 years from now. Now that was 1954. That was 70 years ago. And we have more segregation in public, as much in 2021 as we had then. And so what happened is that when white flight came, when that law was passed in 1968, the housing law was passed, then white people they moved, but they began to move with public accommodation in 1954. I think Joanne was on the council in the 60s. Am I right?
No, sir.
50s?
Me?
Yeah.
I was on city council in the 70s.
70s, okay. Joanne, I'm picking on Joanne. But all I'm saying is that period of time is when we had the white flight. And so your question with regards to that is that the majority of us live in and it's interesting. Kansas City, Missouri has 318 square miles in 3 counties.
4.
A little bit of Cass County. We're at the southwest. Basically 3 counties. Jackson on this side of the river, Clay and Platte on the north side. But the majority of us today who are of African ancestry live between the river, Bannister, probably Troost, and 435. And it ain't because we love each other so. It's because of the same thing that caused us to be in this area years ago. Because there's still discrimination in terms of lending institutions, in terms of all those kind of things that we do. And so please forgive me for kind of monologuing here.
Maybe you can clear something up for me that's been troubling me. In the early 1950s, Little Willie Minifield wrote a song, Going to Kansas City. And the popularity of that song went worldwide. And I've been told that there was a white councilman who didn't want the association of going to 18th and Vine, and he lived on Vine south of 27th Street, had the name of Vine changed to Wayne. And as I drove down Vine South, I get to 29th Street, and Vine is no more. It's Wayne. Is there any truth that that was changed because of that song?
To the
Thank
best
you.
of my knowledge, it sure is rain. That's what sure is rain. That's why it's from rain, because, you know, again, that's south of that. As far as I know, I've heard that so many times also. And yeah, and so it's Vine goes into Wayne.
Yep.
And that's the reason why. Because again, we talk about south of 27th Street, and right there, just after you pass over other pass, right by the lake, it's Wayne right on out way to 75th Street and on out there. Yeah, yes, that's why. And oh my God, we don't have enough time.
I was talking about 12th Street.
Huh?
The song first
Oh,
came out.
yeah, it was 12th Street and Vine, but still fine. Yeah. And then there were those who protest. I'm going there. Kansas City, give me a Kansas City and a.
All right, Alvin. Time's out.
Work that out, did you?
I want to hear that.
So it's been good sitting here, hearing all the stories. As someone who's been born and raised in Kansas City, but further south, I was born in Research, 72nd, moved out to Lee Summit, grew up there, and then went to Spelman to attend to kind of get that, the thing that you guys are talking about. What is advice that you can give to the younger generation from all of this that you've seen, the changes? How could you bottle this up into advice and just kind of points for us to be able to live by to help keep that spirit alive, or at least revive it and give it forward to our children? That's my question.
I don't know if there's an
Let me
answer.
just make one comment about Research Hospital. Research Hospital, that's interesting, because Research Hospital was Harry S. Truman, the president's hospital, but it would not admit black people. And so when they moved from there out on Meyer Boulevard, we marched behind the movement. They had a group of us in Congress of Racial Equality, and other group marched out there in protest, and eventually, I guess they did open it up to what it is now. And I'm not sure what it is now. But I just wanted to share that with you. That's the history of Research Hospital. But I'll let...
What about advice?
I'll give you the advice. I'll let somebody else deal with it. She wants to... Well, you heard this one.
I think the main thing we can encourage our young people to do is to stay in school, get an education, and there's more to do than just the bebop and the, what do they call it? Yeah,
Rap.
the rap and that sort of thing. Because there's one rap out of 1,000 that's going to make it. And I know I have a great-grandson who that's all he thinks about wanting to become, rather than thinking about wanting to be a doctor or a lawyer or educator or scientist or chemist or whatever not. We need to teach our children to want to learn something beside the hip hop and the whatever else they call it.
I don't have things to say. Because I'm against all that junk.
My comment about what to do is to first know your history.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then get your education, learn the laws of your city, your state, your nation, and then do your work. Vote, vote, vote.
I find that's a difficult thing to answer. I guess because media has so much going on now, and everybody's got their phone and they're looking at trash on the phone, and that takes the mind of the certainly the young people. They pay more attention to things of that nature. It's action. Either movies got to have somebody jumping, falling through the glass window and down, and things of that. If it's a story that has a grip to it, they don't have time to listen to anything like that. They want something that's moving. But I don't know. It's a difficult thing to answer. Every time you see something on the media, they pick it up and they run with that. But something that has something value to it, they don't pay attention to it. It's not moving fast enough action going on. I don't know. Listen, this young man, he's not on the panel, but why don't we let him answer that question? Is that okay? Yes, you would. Oh, you got a lot to say. I know you have. He's been bashful now, but I think he probably could answer that better than we could.
Alvin, you have the last word.
That was a hard question.
Well, I think it is hard, but I think there's a response. First of all, deal with the family.
There you
go. We've had a disintegration of the family, and it's good to have two parents in the home, not baby's mama and baby's daddy kind of bit, but there's something also about faith, and I don't care which one of it is. It can be Jewish, it can be Buddhist, it can be whatever the case might be, but a faith that kind of ties you to something that's greater than yourself. As Ida said, I think knowing about the stuff, we're not going to get it in our schools unless you go to Spelman or to Morehouse or to Clark Atlanta or to one of the BC youth schools, because they're not going to get it in the public schools more than likely, because now this CRT is there and they don't want you to even teach about slavery. But I think some of the things you have to do at home. Another thing I think that you have to do is to be able to know who you are and where you come from, and know your history. If they don't teach it to your kids about slavery, then how that, and teach them about the American system, the racism that exists in the American system that started when we first got off the boats that they brought here in 1619. And you can't forget the Native Americans who were indigenous people, how they were treated. So talk about that, even if they don't teach it in school. And above all, stress education. Stress education. I bet each one of us up here, and some of you in the audience, if you're old enough, that's all your parents talked about. You got to get education. And I remember my mother saying to me, I grew up when we finally moved into an all poor white neighborhood. See, we were poor, they were poor. And after my mother always wanted to see report cards. Well, mine was at that time like an E, B, C's, and I got C's and B's. And my white friends, they bring report cards. Some of them got D's and F's, and rarely any of them ever got a C or a B. And my mother would say to them, Tommy, you got to do better. Billy, you got to do, Bobby, you can do better than that. But when they went home, my mother said, you see, with those report cards that they got, your friends, you got to do better. Because this world would not accept you unless you got an education. And once you get it in your head, they can't take it away from you. They can take anything away from you, but when you got it in your head, that was what we were stressing. You got to get. That's the kind of thing that Booker T. Washington and others were stressing through that whole pre and post slavery period is an education. Because one day you can use that education. And so that's what I would suggest. But as I said a lot, but I think that if you can pick up on some of it, but to teach the kids early on, and have your home full of books of Carter G. Woodson and other great African American historians and psychologists, psychologists, and like that. Both my daughters are left, but I have a daughter that's teaching her. They got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and both of them have full-blown sickle cell, 7 and 5 years old. But they're teaching them. They learn how to read before they start school. They learn how to read when they were 3 and 4 years old, and you read to them. And I have another daughter now here who just gave birth to her second child. She reads to the one who's now 2, reads to him.
Every night.
Reads to him. Just read to him. And that's what you have to do, I think. And you talk about indoctrination. That's what you have to do. Yes.
Stick together and raise your, get married, stick together and raise your kids. Each household has its own rule. If you have the correct rule, you don't have to worry about your kid going out there shooting somebody. Of course, your kid going out there want to sell a bag of dope to somebody, you know. That all comes out of their home.
Yeah.
So
The parents are responsible for their kids. Teach them something and raise them. Have a good wholesome home for your kids. Why you want to get married and then you go run this way and the husband gonna run this way and the wife gonna run this way and the kids go to hell. That's what happens. You get all this killing on the street because you don't take time to raise your family.
That's right.
that was a benediction.
I want to say something. I'm going to piggyback what my grandfather said, if you don't mind. I'm coming up here because this is my grandfather. I'm big into my community. I'm big into community service. These are things that kids don't know about nowadays. They're looking for a penny. And I feel like with life and value and things like that, you do things for free because what's for you is for you, and guess what? Karma happens and blessings is going to come right back to you. And what he mean by the household and things like that, respect, love, morals, all of these things start at home. You can't put your kids out in this world think that they're going to catch up on or add on to these things by themselves because guess what? This world was never made for our kids to grow within. You have to grow within your household. Then you flourish. You become that butterfly when you step out to the world. So when I went into being an art teacher, it paid me pennies, but I wasn't there for the dime. I was there for how it made me feel. You know, these kids need leadership, and here they are watching TV, these devices that, you know, kids or parents, you know, this accountability role. They're okay with allowing these devices to raise their children, and guess what? It's not in a proper form. They're not giving the light of positivity, the togetherness that we're lacking in our community. We lack togetherness as a whole, and that's going to start in our community. And that's, guess what, without a dime. You know, that's me going to Harvesters, committing 4 hours. I don't go there as a reward. I go there because I owe this to myself, to stay humble, to stay humane, to remain an individual and have my own voice behind the reason of my purpose. That makes me feel good, you know. So when I went into the realm of being a teacher or art teacher, I was all about energy. These kids come from everywhere. No judgment. I'm not here for that. I'm here to teach them. But also, too, what they did, because I was such a positive light, they went hang on me, you know. Kids gravitate to positivity, you know. They gravitate, they hanging on me and all that type of stuff. And it's like, you know what, guess what? I'm not your friend, but guess what? That's okay. I'm your mentor. It's two different things. I'm not here to be your friend. And guess what? That's okay. That's something my mom taught me at a young age. Now, everybody's made to be your friend, and guess what? That's okay. You know, so to enlighten this whole situation, what I've learned from you guys is history. I'm trying to get your age. I want to know how you did it. And that comes with knowledge and power and togetherness, and, you know, taking the time out to learn your history. That's a you thing. You have to want to learn that. Nobody's going to instill that into you unless you spark an interest. You see what I'm saying? You can talk to a kid till they turn black and blue, but if it's not within their interest or within their household, they're not going to grasp it. But you have to make it fun. You know, how we highlight holidays that don't matter because of material things. Like, for example, Christmas. Each his own. No judgment on that you celebrate that, but there's no purpose behind it. You see what I'm saying? I like Kwanzaa. Every day signifies something valuable to our community. We're not educating that. You see what I'm saying? It's about the dollar. quick, the looking good, you know. And now these kids are in this world where they're being judged because they don't have the latest things. You know, it doesn't make a person to have a brand anything on your back. It makes you to wear the clothes, not let the clothes wear you. That makes any sense. You see what I'm saying? So I love this. I love the whole history thing. I love coming down here and getting educated, and also hearing my grandpa. You know, he has his perspective. It's okay, you know, because guess what? If I was his age and looked at the world, what it's going through, I would be mad too. You know, because I came too far to be in the same space. It's been too long. You know, and it's us as adults, as parents, because I think it's either the 5th or 6th generation of kids raising kids. And there's nothing you can do for a kid if they're not willing to listen. You know, they get kids, oh, I'm grown now. I get that, but you still have a job in your household. So your kids can go out and move out into this world where they're ready. Not, you know, put across situations where they're coming across police and all this extra violence, and your kid is unaware of what's going on because you didn't teach that. Now you're playing survival of the fetus. You weren't ready for that. You see what I'm saying? So now you're going to get the whiplash of ignorance and all this violence because that's not what you're used to. You know, so I say the best thing that we could do as a community is come together. Make time for Boys and Girls Club. I go about that. That was togetherness. That was building teamwork. You know, that was building integrity. You know, that was building a becoming form of myself of who I want to be in this world. You know, these things are not highlighted, how videos and being a part of and being a follower or not. These are things that are up front when it should be in the back burner. You know, so I think the best thing that I could give my people under me is togetherness. Because once you're together, can't nobody tear you apart. Can't nobody tear you apart but you. And that's what our community been doing. We've been tearing each other apart. And we blame everybody else.
Thank you. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing this conversation with the elders. I want to thank our panel for this wonderful afternoon, for sharing the knowledge, sharing the histories, sharing Blackness with us, and doing it here at the Black Archives Midnight. We appreciate you so very much. Can we give them a hand? Thank you. Thank you.